Hey there, my name is Jesse Novotny. I'm going to be doing a little walkthrough here of how to set up a Rails, an Angular single-page application on Rails with Devise and Bootstrap. So here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and start out by creating my new Rails, new Devise demo. And it's going to create this folder on my desktop. It's going to go ahead and start bundling all of the gems, and then I'm going to cd into Devise, and then I'm going to open up Sublime Text. And just heads up, I do have another window here with some snippets I'll be copying and pasting over, but I'd like to make sure that I go through everything with you. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead in here into the gem file and remove a couple things that I do not want to use and add a couple things that I do want to use, such as we've got this right here. We've got Bower, we've got Devise, we've got Angular Rails templates, which allows you to access, put all of your HTML templates in your JavaScript assets folder, which is handy, so that you don't have them scattered all around. With a single page application, I want to put all my views into the JavaScript folder there. And then we've got Bootstrap SaaS here, and all this information is provided through, if you just Google these Angular Devise, it'll tell you exactly where to go, how to add a username to Devise. This is how to install Bower Rails, and then we've also got basically Devise for Rails as well, and Bootstrap. All right, so we've got that installed. I'm going to go ahead and bundle install now. Great, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my rake db create. And then we've got Rails G Bower Rails initialize JSON, which will create my Bower JSON folder. Great. And then I've got a couple dependencies here that I'm copying over. And I've got my Angular, got Angular UI router, and then Angular Devise. So we've got Devise for Rails, and then we've got Devise for Angular. Great, so now I'm going to start my Rails G Devise install. And then I've got Rails G Devise user. Excellent. And then I'm going to do a Rails G migration add user name to users. Username is a string and have that be unique. Why is this crapping out on me? Anyways, I know that the file's there. I did this earlier. There it is. Okay, so now I can do rake db migrate. And then let's just go ahead and set up our view. So we'll go over to config and set up roots here, and I want to do root to application index. Okay, and then I'm going to go to my controllers, application controller here, and def index render application index. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here into my views, and I've got layouts, but I want to just create an application index folder. Save this as index.html.erb. Whoops. I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this stuff right to here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this guy. And then I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I'm going to remove all this turbo link, not medial. Remove all the turbo link stuff. And then remove this yield here. And let's just make sure that everything's working. All right, got that started up. Oh, of course, I forgot. I got to go into my applications here and make sure that everything's situated. And so I do have this set up on another screen, so I'm just going to copy and paste this over. This is the two very important lines to get Bootstrap working with your CSS. You also need to make sure that you rename this to Sass. And then I've got my application.js. Or sorry, not just, yeah, app. That's right. And here I added in Angular, Angular UI router, Angular Devise, Rails templates, and then Bootstrap sprockets. And now, if we go ahead and refresh this page, let's make sure it works. Did I do, you know, I don't think I did my Bower, rake Bower install. There we go. Yep, that was the problem. I didn't do rake Bower install, so now I've got all my components here. Let me go ahead and bring this back. Got to start my Rails server again. And if you couldn't already tell, I'm pretty new at all this, so I still get errors, but I feel like that's what defines all coders. So great, we've got our application working. It says hello world, and we've got everything situated to start creating our single page application with Angular. So we've got this here, we've got our body. Let's just go ahead and create ng app equals my app, and then I've got my UI view. Okay. And then I'm going to go over here into my, close that out, JavaScript, create a new file for app.js. And then I'm going to create another file for routes, routes.js. And so in here, I'm just going to create an IFI. With Angular, create my module and bring into it UI router. Make sure you have a dot there. You've got Devise and you've got templates. And then in my, let's close that out. And in my routes here, I'm going to do Angular dot module my app dot config function state provider, and then URL router provider, and then I've got my call that state provider dot state home, and let's call this a URL. I'm just going to stub out some stuff right now. Views home.html controller home controller login and then there's going to be some other stuff here as well, but I'll get to that later. Okay, and then I can go over here and do URL router provider otherwise. Oh, you know what I did forget here? I forgot all the URLs. Great. All right. So now I should probably, now would be a good time to just stub out my folders that I'll be needing. So I've got controllers, and I've got a directive that I'll be making for my navigation. Views. And then, let's see here, I think that's all I need for now. Let's go ahead and stub out these views. Got home. Home page. Login page. Register page. All right, let's just make sure these routes are working. So we've got, let's see. Oh, we also need to create our home controller, of course. So in here, I'll go ahead and create my Angular.module. In this case, I'm going to be calling my app. And this is home controller.js. And I want to give this access to scope, root scope, and auth. And let's see, I'm not going to do anything else just yet. And this is going to be auth controller.js. And let's just set that aside for now. Great. And just to make sure things are working, I'm going to go back down here to my views, index, UI view, my app. Great. Let's see here. I want to give this access to the controller as well. And so when I go home, it's going to be loading that home HTML page. And it's going to say, let's see what happens. Do I have my server running? Yes, I do. I've got an error here. Model app due to router provider, URL router prover. That's not how you spell prover. There we go. It's saying hello world. And I guarantee that's because it's pulling that in from there. Watch. Just to prove to you, hello world now. Great. So now the next thing we need to do is start building out our controllers and everything, and our navigation, and get everything working with Devise. So let's see. So the auth controller here, I'm going to go ahead and pull in some code from outside here. I also want to give this state. So let's see, we've got variable config. You know what? I know it may be shameful. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and write this out. You know what, some of these functions are actually pretty long, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this from elsewhere. So here what we're doing is we're taking our auth, which is basically the Devise Angular gem or whatever, and we're going to be pulling that into our auth controller, and we're going to say when register is called, we've got auth register and we've got scope user. We're pulling this config, and then it's going to produce the user. We want to tie that user to the scope, and we want to alert the user that they've signed in, and then we want to redirect them back to the home. Okay, and so from login here, I'm going to do the same thing. I've got some code here that I'd like to just pull in. And so here we've got some bootstrap column stuff going on here. We've got, this is that login function that is referred to in the auth controller. And then in the register, we've got pretty much the same thing going on over here. Except this time when that form is submitted, it's going to call that register function. All right, and so now we have each of these input tied to the placeholder of email. We've got user.email, user.username, user.password, etc. I know that there's some information I need to go through in the controller here. This is all information I found from the going through Devise. So when you download Devise, you need to install, let's see here, create the user. This I don't need as much. I do need this though, Angular Devise. So I'm going to need to go into my Rails application config file. Where do we have that? Config, application, add that, and then I need to go back into my application controller here. And I know there's some stuff I need to do in my application controller. Let's see here. We want to do before action, configure permitted parameters if Devise controller, and then skip before action, verify authenticity token. And then we've got this protected method here, configure permitted parameters, and all this is really doing is adding the username into here. Okay. Now we also want to create a users controller. And this one is going to be pretty simple. It's just going to be finding that user and then rendering the JSON of that user. And then the next thing I want to do is create a serializer, Rails G serializer for user. Great. And then I also want to give it the username. Excellent, close that out. And then one other thing is respond to JSON. Let's see, I'll make sure I got this correct. Got that. Just checking off things I gotta do on my other page here. User serializer. Okay, great. So now that we have this we've got this home page, we've got this login page, and we've got this register page. The next thing I want to do is create a navigation. So let's go ahead and create nav.html. And I'm going to create a new directive here. This is nav directive.js. I'm going to call Angular module my app. Directive navbar. And then we've got template URL, which can be views, nav.html, and then we've got controller, nav, controller. and I need to create that controller. Great, so let's see here. We've got nav, nav directive, got that. That looks all good. Nav controller. And here I want to have access to scope, auth, root scope, and maybe a couple other things. We'll see. Okay. So this is what's going to be controlling this nav HTML here, and this is just a bunch of code. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this in from the other side here. So we've got a column here. We've got UL, navbar, nav, and then each one of these links is going to be, this is going to be linked to the home, UI sref. This is for UI router, so it takes us to that home state. And then we've got a link to log in, we've got a link to register, and we've got a link to log out. Now logout doesn't have a state, so we just have an ng click here that triggers the function of logout, whereas these are actually going to take us to the login and register page, and these are going to be hidden once the user is signed in. So let's go back to this auth controller here, and this one is also not auth controller, nav controller. So nav controller is a bit robust for what I just want to type out. So I'm just going to copy and paste all this stuff in. So feel free to pause if you want to copy some of this yourself. But all this stuff is found in one of the guides that I found, and I'll link to that in the description of this video. But we've got a scope.signedIn equals auth is authenticated, and that's actually when you go to this Devise, Angular Devise, it's a fantastic documentation. It provides all these auth user, auth current user, auth is authenticated. This is where that auth.login comes from, which is what I'm getting right here. Auth.login, auth.register. So this is all stuff I pulled from the documentation for the Angular Devise code base. Register, great. Okay, so now that we've got this URL set up here, I want to go ahead and take this directive and I want to implant it into every single page that I have. So I'm going to go back down to my views. I'm going to go back to index.html, and above UI view, I want to put in there navbar, not BART, navbar. Okay, and let's just load this up and see if we're getting any errors. Unexpected token at nav directive. Controller. That's interesting. I thought that was the same as, oh, of course, I have to have that as a return value. Great. So we still have this here. That's because we haven't, this is conflicting with the column bootstrapping that I did for the navigation, but this is exactly what we wanted. So if we go to login, it's going to go to login. If we go to register, it's going to the registration page, and then we have this home page. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this home page that I have over here back to home.html, and so this is hello, and if user, welcome the user. This is hello world. Let's see here. Home controller. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. Yep. So let's see what happens when I try to register. I'm going to go ahead and type in my email. I'm going to go to Jesse, password, and I'm going to have my fingers crossed. Thanks for signing up. And now I go to my home page. It's saying welcome Jesse, and if I click on log out, it says you have been logged out, and now I'm no longer logged in. And all that's really set up is through that auth controller here. Is the register, we've got login, and we've got the nav controller over here, which sets up these listeners through Devise that say scope Devise when there's a new registration. And I'm setting the user to the root scope so that as I build out my application, I can just access the user from the root scope wherever I am. There might be better ways of doing that, but like I said, I'm a pretty new developer, and this was something that really helped me out. And I'm glad that I could make this video for everyone so that they could see how this works, because Devise was definitely a struggle for me. And let's just check the login as well while we're here. And then we've got password. You are now signed in. Takes me to the home page. Oh, and there was one other thing that I want to mention before I go, was going back to the roots. You want to set up, for these login and registration pages, you want to set up an onEnter function. And this is going to be taking in auth and also state, so that we can do auth.current user, then function state.go home. And all this is really doing is preventing someone from going to this URL even if they're logged in. So now I'm still logged in here, okay? But now if I go to try and go to login, it'll just take me right back to home. So anyways, I think this pretty much covers everything that I want to talk about. I can definitely I'll create a repo for this Devise demo, put a link to it in the description of this video, and please feel free to submit issues or questions if there are any. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.